Hi, you're listening to the Big Sound Small Town podcast, where you will hear all the big sounds from a small town perspective. I am your host, Sandy Carlton, and this podcast is brought to you from our friends at Defiant Whiskey, distilled in beautiful Golden Valley, North Carolina.
Well, hey, Sandy, I'm Louisa Branscomb, and it's a pleasure to be here with you.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I just saw you share the stage with John and Daryl,
Yep.
and it was very fine, and they're great songwriters, and you held your own.
Well, thank you very much. I really, I think we all had the feeling we were in some high cotton and a lot of mutual respect. And
Without a doubt.
I played that same workshop last year and was really hoping and excited I could be a part of things again this year.
Well, it was good. You guys did a really good job. It was both entertaining and knowledgeable.
Thank you.
So it's
and we did the whole thing without a banjo joke too.
There was no banjo joke, but really the fact that Daryl did Old Joe Clark. Mm-hmm. This being a banjo-based festival,
yes.
I thought it was really appropriate.
Yep.
So you have a long. This sounds bad because I know you started at an early age, but you do have a long music career.
Well, thank you. I'll pretend like I started at an early age to not date myself.
You did. Yes.
I don't mind my age. I think that being kind of a senior citizen in bluegrass is a beautiful thing. I mean, I'm finding that at this point in my life, of course, I still have quite a bit more I want to do, and I'm working on a book, and that's I'm working on a book on songwriting, 2 books actually. At the same time, I've decided that, it's sweet to look back. That bluegrass song, "Too Sweet to Be Remembered."
Yes.
That song captures the feeling to me of kind of looking back on. I came into bluegrass. I knew Lester,
right.
And I came in I guess I was 19, and but looking back on the different opportunities I've had and risks I've taken, mistakes I've made, and all I've learned, and very much enjoying this phase of my life, as well as seeing a festival like this, where you and I are sitting right now, Earl Scruggs Festival, that is bringing so much of the old and so much of the new, and showing all the connections.
And that is a Earl thing. Earl was just not strictly bluegrass, and with the Earl Scruggs Review, he covered just about anything.
Well, let me tell you something about a story about the Earl Scruggs Review. Sure. So my band was Boot Hill, and this was about in the 70s,
sure, I remember Boot Hill.
Late 70s. We were playing on a festival at Grandfather Mountain, and we were in between Doc Watson and the Earl Scruggs Review. Now, they had a big sound, and I'm telling you, there were so many amps and everything on stage.
True.
And I was like, we're going to go out there, 4 little skinny people, kids playing our stuff. So I was nervous, so I always made a practice of using the restroom before I would go on stage, just part of my little ritual. Well, they had porta-johns. So I go in the porta-john, I flip the little thing, and then when I'm ready to get out, I can't get the latch up because it's on the side of a hill, and the whole porta-john had shifted. And, my co-leader in my band was off hanging out with Merle.
Yeah.
And so that tells you how long ago it was, Merle Watson. And no one could hear me because the review was playing, and they were so friggin' loud. You could have heard them, in South Carolina.
Right.
And I tried rocking that thing. Anyway, finally I was beating on the door, and they were in between songs, and somebody let me out, and we played our set.
That's hilarious. That is just hilarious. So, okay, you played bluegrass by choice because you had a choice to play other stuff.
That's right, yeah. I had an opportunity through Mel Tillis to get involved in the country world. And, of course, I grew up writing my own songs. I didn't really try to write a certain genre or this or that. I just wrote them mostly in private as a, personal craft.
Yeah.
But I did fall in love with the bluegrass, and a lot of it was the banjo. I mean, when I picked up a banjo, and that sound that it made is not like anything else.
most of the people that are drawn to banjos, it becomes almost the first time they hear it.
Yeah.
With banjo players, I mean, it's like, oh yeah, that's the sound I want.
Oh yeah, I just remember sitting for hours, forward roll, alternating roll.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done that too. I mean, it is. I had a friend, a very fine banjo player, who said it takes 7 years to become an accomplished banjo player. That's what he told all his students. I think he was right.
Yeah, it takes a lot of discipline, that's for sure.
Yeah, it does. So when did you know that was going to be your life? Or did you?
It was almost like instant. Like, I don't ever do drugs, but there's some of those drugs they talk about. If you even once, you're goner.
Yes.
It was like that. It was, I think it was, I was in college, and I had come back from a year abroad, and there was rock music going on, and there was country rock and Americana, Creedence and Grateful Dead and all that. There was also, like, we were starting to have loud, angry electronic music, and I couldn't relate. So a friend of mine played banjo at college, and we started going to bluegrass festivals, and I had an old gut string Mexican guitar, and I was playing old Joe Clark on that Mexican guitar for a while, and then we started going to Union Grove, and then I was so in love with this, being able to write a song, and then the people you play with put that song together, and so to beautiful. Where you can, we did a very large proportion of songs I wrote in that band, and there's searching for the words here for the kind of little innate magic blessing of having people give you feedback, good and bad. You get to have your songs out there. You find out who you are. Songwriting is a sobering thing, really, because you're kind of standing out there naked, and you don't know if people will like that song or not.
I thought I was a good writer. I went to Kerrville Folk Festival. The other people that was on the show beside me was Robert Earl Keen. But Robert was one of them. And I learned when I got out there that, you know what, I either got to get better or quit, because a guy I stayed in a tent beside, he played me this song of his, and it was She's in Love with the Boy, if you know the song. It was a big hit for Trisha Wood.
Oh, definitely.
He was just a regular guy in a campground beside me. And I thought, God, that's a really good song. And it would be like 5 years later before that song would get recorded.
Wow.
But it's like, oh, geez, everybody out here can write better than I can.
Oh, that's a great story. Sometimes songs have a life of their own, and when you're a songwriter and you stick around a while, I mean, they hadn't gotten rid of me yet.
Right.
Things happen that it's like a spiral. New stories about the same song. So sure. John Denver, many people don't know, did Steel Rails.
Oh, he did? I didn't know John did that.
And he had it on his last album, which won a Grammy. But it was posthumous.
Right.
Am I saying that right? Posthumous.
Yeah.
And so I didn't get to hear him actually sing that except for on the album. Yeah. But there's a story about when you recorded it. That's a different story. I was out on the Olympic Peninsula, and there was an airplane show, and he loved those, what do you call them, model planes?
Gliders.
Yeah. And I met the guy who had his plane next to John's at the time he crashed.
Oh, okay.
So I heard, it was kind of a sad story anyway, I heard the inside story about how he crashed his plane. And so that's where Steel Rails stopped as far as John Denver is. But they released it, and very proud that he liked the song enough to do it.
Oh, I agree. Do you remember the first time you heard one of your songs on the radio?
The McPeak Brothers, and it was Steel Rails, and it was 71, and they were friends of us in Virginia.
Right.
Yeah. And they have a beautiful version. It's slower, and they hold out the harmony words. Steel Rails is such a nothing song, really, when you think about it. It's just like all it is like 145 words in a repeating melody, and I've always been learning from that song. I'm still learning from that song what it is to strive for, because I just did it accidentally, quite honestly. But the McPeak Brothers did a real different, very honey. They had a beautiful blend,
Right.
It's been done many different ways.
I was getting ready to comment on the fact that is a song that has lent itself to so many different versions.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, not only has it been recorded a lot, but really most of them are not the same.
No, and the words are quite between you and me,
Yeah.
and y'all just don't listen for a second out there.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. The words are usually wrong.
Well, I find that a case a little.
But isn't that a lesson? Like you get so full of yourself as a songwriter, you're like, oh, I got to get this line right, and you got to change this, change that, and you get it right, and then people don't hear it accurately, and they do their own version.
Yeah.
And Allison sang a line differently, but I think she had trouble understanding it on the record,
Right.
and I didn't know her at the time.
Right.
And I really liked her version, and she improved on me.
Yes, good.
It was the line that let's see, sun is shining through the open boxcar door, blinding my mind to the things I've known before. Sun is shining through the open boxcar door, blinding my mind to the things I've known before. Okay, that's the correct line.
Right.
I believe she sang, lining my mind with the things I've known before, which is beautiful, lining my mind.
Right.
And then somebody else recorded, lying in my mind with the things. It's been, that one line has been done, I think I counted 9 different ways.
Right. Well, you know, the beautiful part of it is you can love it all the way to the bank, you know.
Yeah, I can love it all the way to McDonald's.
Well, yeah,
but
I do understand that.
you know,
these days, but you've been around long enough to where you had real royalty checks. I mean,
oh well, let's just say I am still letting the feeling seep in that something that
Sure.
wonderful happened to me. It's almost too big. It's been 45 years since she did it, right? 91. What is that?
Yeah.
91. And I still can't believe that was me, you know?
I have songs that sometimes I don't. I wonder how I wrote that song.
Do you ever wonder where they come from for you, or
I have.
how to tap into that?
Sometimes I can't tap into it. I don't really have writer's block, but I can have an idea, and sometimes I have to live with it. I got an idea, and I sit down and write it, and it just will not write. And sometimes I have to live with that idea.
Well,
And other times they feel like gifts. Sometimes I can sit down.
you're on the right frequency to start with. So like, I'm fascinated by that, and you know, I've been leading songwriting retreats with a kind of a experiential model that I have created over the years since 1989. So we just had our 34th spring retreat this year, and one of the things I'm fascinated by is how do we arrange ourselves inside,
Right.
our inner furniture, if you will,
Sure.
to where we're ready for an inspiration and the right one for the right time.
Well, I do believe that you have to be open to that, to the songs.
Well, it's a courageous process because if a song's not about something that rings true to you, then the song doesn't ring true to other people too.
This is true.
And there's a poet, Garcia Lorca, and he said, "Who among us has not pulled back the curtains of the heart only to see the furniture in disarray?" So I think if you're gonna kind of get in that meditative or reflective, spiritual, for me, place of writing a song with great respect to the universe, because, you know, to make a space for that song, then you're going to run into other crap
Oh, yeah.
when you look inside yourself. And
I mean-
then sometimes that crap is the stuff you really need to write the song about.
is, really.
Or like moving that crap out of the way.
Sometimes you have to do that too.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of it has been therapy for me. I don't know how well I would have stayed put together over the years without the ability to write about not just my life, but the life around me.
Yeah.
The stories, and I'm a big fan of stories. I collect stories. I know tons of stories, and they come into your life, and sometimes you can write about them, but sometimes you can't, as much as you would really, really
You can't force the process.
No.
And it has to really connect with yourself. But sometimes it's just that we aren't in a clear enough place to have that resonance.
And sometimes, I think the song presents the idea to you, but not enough of it. You got to figure it out on your own.
Mm-hmm.
I also have a theory that if you have a song and you have it and you don't put down the thoughts, if you do not write it, it goes to someone else. It's kind of like a bird that flies to another person.
I know. I wrote a song and it had the same melody as part of one of John Denver's. Mine was totally different, and it scared me. It's like, did I hear it? And it really scared me. But I think, all we can do is be as honest as we can when we write the song. And isn't it a miracle that, in country and bluegrass, we set four, what do they say, three chords in the truth,
Right, yeah.
and not a few. I've tried to put a few more in sometimes, but you can have just that simplicity and have so many different songs.
Oh.
And you're talking about songs being therapy, and being a psychologist. As you know, I went into psychology because I enjoy learning from people how they do their lives, and Vietnam veterans were my inspiration. That's my generation. And how did people like yourself, when I listened to their stories, I felt they helped me get closer to my own soul, because I feel like you guys, and we won't have to talk about this, but I feel like I learned so much from the veterans because they lived closer to the bone than most of us ever will, and that has helped me stretch and write some good songs too. So that opportunity to have the growing pains, I think when I do that, it makes me a better songwriter.
Do you have a favorite song of yours, or they're like children, you love them all?
Oh, they're probably like children. I'm like, okay, go do your thing. Mm-hmm. And it took a long time to let go of some of that control. Mm-hmm. And I've got a lot of funny stories about me sharing my opinion about things, like with Allison, about how to do the songs. And then I realized if it's a good song, you got to let go, because if it's a good song, these extraordinarily talented people in our genre, they will know what to do for them.
This is true. I find that to be the case.
Yeah.
That you can do the best with it you can do, but then there's, I always think everybody does my songs better than I do them.
I'm always a little shy to do my own songs, especially the ones that other people have recorded. But then people have encouraged me and said, yeah, but you can put the feeling that you had when you wrote it.
You can.
And Christopherson sang, and
Sure.
Leonard Cohen sang, and
Yeah.
But I was thinking about that, what you said about therapy, and I was thinking about when you write a song, from the beginning to the end of that song, something has changed inside us. There's a transformation where we've moved forward in some way. Something is healed, or we see the light in a different way. And then I think that's what happens with a successful song when someone hears
Right.
it.
I did not know we'd be talking really. This is a songwriter thing, but
Yeah.
I really like this because you're probably the only songwriter that's ever came on my show out of 300 interviews I've done and really talked about songwriting.
Oh, well, gosh, thank you.
Because that is when people ask me, I am a writer. I am a songwriter. I'm not a singer-songwriter. I'm a songwriter. I'm like Christopherson. I sang professionally for 50 years, but I'm not a good singer. Mm-hmm. People pay money, but I'm not a good singer. Mm-hmm. I always like it when I'm always envious of like Kevin. He's got such a good voice. It's easy for him to pitch his songs because
Yeah, it helps, doesn't it?
it really does. I mean, it really does, and I learned that early on. But
I think it helps, but at the same time, I've heard from so many wonderful artists. Dale Ann, Valerie Smith, and Claire. They want to hear
all sing really well.
that sing great, that are okay with just a clean demo with just me singing. And and I've gotten more confident about just doing what I do,
does
you
make
know?
it easier for them to interpret your work.
I mean,
too.
I'm standing one step closer to the soul of that song than anybody else.
Oh, you
and
are.
so
Actually, you are the soul of that song.
it's come through me in some way. But, you know, you're talking about songwriting. I could just, you know, we could make this a 3-hour podcast, but
We could.
I just love, one of the reasons I love mentoring, and I've had, let's see, in 35 years of workshops, probably, I don't know, close to 1,000 people come through. Most of them come several years, so it's not that many people, maybe 700 people. But every time I ask for feedback, what helped with this, you know, what helped you write, what helped you feel like a songwriter, what helped.
Right.
And so I tried this year, I took all that information and I put it together in kind of a model for how to teach, how to be a mentor,
Right.
and what seems to help. And
I've run a bunch of workshops over the years and taught writing classes and worked with groups of people. And you know, everybody's not a writer.
yeah, well, and everybody's different, that's for
They
sure.
are different. Even, I mean, even good ones are different.
Yeah.
I mean, it is really. Yeah, and I learned from your performance today that you're not much of a co-writer.
Not as much, but I'm a private person,
I'm
and
the same way.
you know, I'm also not. I'm not a commercial songwriter. Meaning I don't sit down to write because I'm thinking about royalties, and even, you know, there's not that I hadn't needed money from wherever I could get it for
Right,
most
I
of my
do
life.
understand.
At the same time, I have always been in love with the creative process, and that is what nurtures me. And so when I'm lucky enough to have a good day and get that, that's what fills me up.
Well, I think we come from the same point. It's the art of writing the song for me. I do not care what happens to it after I write. I am not driven
Well,
by
and you
success.
can't care. When you write it, you really shouldn't be caring. Now, I know that's not true for the formula
Right.
version in Nashville, and I'm not saying those aren't great songs
Yeah, 6
a lot of the
songwriters
time.
these days.
Yeah, 6 songwriters. I would just wither up. I mean, I'm just a little girl who rides a pony in the woods in Alabama, and I was very shy. And then I'm in bluegrass, and for a long time I was the first woman playing banjo that I was around on the
Right.
stage. There were a few others, and then there were more, but. And so I was used to being being under the spotlight, which
Sure.
was very uncomfortable for me. And I wasn't a great banjo player. I'd only been playing a year and a half when we went on the road. And
Right.
and at the same time, our band was inspired, and we had a good time, and we had
Well,
a
that
good
is
following.
a big part of music.
Yeah.
I mean that is probably. I don't think anybody. I guess there are people that get into the music business thinking about the success end, but truthfully, if you do that, there's probably a 99% chance that's not going to really happen for you.
I think it steps on your song to be thinking about the rules and this and that. And like when I have people, and including people who haven't written, and I have a lot of advanced songwriters come because it's a model that allows for all levels.
Right.
A lot of times people, they say they're recovering Nashville songwriters, you know,
Well, I
that
mean,
they
I
got
do
hurt in that
understand.
process of being told that you had to do it like this and you had to do it like that. Then again, you know, there are certain fundamental things, but then my joy right now as a writer is when to break the rules and when does it work to break the rules.
Sure.
Like Dear Sister
Yeah.
broke the rules. And if you want, I can
Yeah,
play just
of course I do.
at the risk of sounding like myself.
No, this is great.
Dear Sister was co-written with Claire Lynch. It's a song from my Alabama heritage
Right.
that was written from a book of letters that my great-great-great uncles wrote home in the Civil War, and it was inspired by one of those letters. And so I come from Cotton, down in Alabama, and it's this song. I knew it was a beautiful song, and Claire is just a brilliant co-writer and singer. But I never thought that it was a commercial song or would even be on an album. I like the story. And so I just sing a couple of lines. One of the things you'll hear, it has a long line that goes down the scale. It's a longer line than usual. It's a slower song than usual. and it doesn't have the same form. It has no chorus.
Yeah.
And it's 5 minutes long on a good day. And for all those reasons, we finished the song, and I'm like, wow, I love that song. And she's like, yeah, I think I'm going to get my guys together this week, and we may just run through that.
Right.
Well, as you know, she recorded a beautiful version that ended up getting Song of the Year, and I told her right up until 5 minutes before they came to that award, I said, there's no way, and she said, Louisa. She knew, because, the great artists know.
Sure, they know.
Yeah, but it felt good to her, so this is a couple of lines of that song. This could be my last letter. I may never see the cotton fields of home again. I miss you, dear sister. Tonight I never felt so all alone. And the fog was so thick that the Stones River stars could scarcely invade the dread and the dark. And all that I could see when I closed my eyes to dream was home, sweet home.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And so that was my great Uncle James writing home in the Civil War from the battlefield.
That's a great
to
story.
his sister.
Yeah, it's like he gave you the song.
Didn't he?
I mean,
But didn't all of you guys who were in a war? Because what I realized when I read those letters after working with veterans for 35 years, a lot of times at the VA, other situations, what I learned so much. Like, I stayed away from that book for a long time because I didn't want to get into Civil War history. I think I was ashamed of some of my Alabama background, and civil rights and all that. And then, I said, no, this is who I am, good or bad. Right. And I read his letters, and I realized, number one, those guys in the Civil War had, just from these letters, 5 brothers, had all of the same symptoms of PTSD that we didn't even learn what to call it, or it was a thing, until my era started doing psychology.
Basically, they did not have a choice. I mean, if it puts you in a bad position if you say, well, I don't really support the South's cause, then one of 2 people are going to burn your house in your place and kill you, and it's going to be either side.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you kind of have to choose, and it's kind of a bad situation.
A no-win situation.
It's no-win. All wars are.
They're all no-win, and basically the song, I think, again, and I was also surprised. Of course, not surprised because of Claire's delivery, but that the song was a period song and still hit home for so many people. And not a single person that I know of in all of these years since we did it has ever said, well, something about it being a Civil War. I mean, they do appreciate the history in it, but at the same time, it's more the human condition of being away from home, in danger, maybe in a battle.
Sure.
And then the fact that the North and the South in this song, which is a true story at Stones River, came together and sang Home Sweet Home. And then the next day, they do what they are hired to do or sent to do. They get out the cannons, and the Confederates were still eating breakfast. And so what I learned again and again as a songwriter at Steel Rails, which has no story, you're just sitting on a train. I mean, there's nothing to the song, and except for whatever soul is wrapped around it. Is I learn again and again that the job of the song and the job of the songwriter is to create a pathway, like an opening down a well, down into where the real truth or feeling about what you need to say in that moment.
That's beautiful. I mean, that's really a beautiful take on songwriting.
Yeah, I might not even have whatever. It doesn't matter about politics. It doesn't matter about. What matters is, are you touching something deeper than your little like I say, my little local self.
Right.
If I write a song for my little local self, it's superficial and it's pretty crappy usually.
Yeah.
Oh,
You actually have a wonderful take on songwriting. I do appreciate you stopping by and doing this.
well, thank you. I think it's been easy to talk to you because you're a fellow songwriter.
Yeah, it is easier with songwriters. I don't get the opportunity to talk with songwriters. Even though I do, most people, I think, even songwriters, will maybe even take Daryl. He's a serious songwriter, but he is also a performer, and I think a lot of times that, they just feel like their songs are just a vehicle for their musical talent.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean,
That's-
you take a real pride in your craft, and that's a beautiful thing that I don't get to talk about very often.
Well, I respect the things that I don't understand. And there's a lot of mystery in songwriting, or I'd be bored to tears. I've just always been a person. It's got to be something that I can keep moving forward. That I can keep learning.
Right.
And so there's always another equally good or better song.
Songs. There's songs is probably the makeup of my DNA, mine or somebody else's. I mean, that's just about. Songs and words have just about been my whole entire life, and
Yeah.
I wouldn't know what to do without that.
Oh, it's hard to even imagine, right? I mean, I'd get a nervous feeling if I had to my first song, I was 5, and it was about a fish.
Right.
And the fish was on a hook, and Dad was teaching us how to fish, and I just tried to get off the dock and away from those worms.
Sure.
But, I wrote the song out of empathy for the fish. It was called Is She the Fishy?
That's funny.
Not my best hook, but, it was like, Is she the fishy? Couldn't get much thinner, so we ate him for our dinner. But the thing I learned looking back is empathy for someone's story, in this case just a little brim in a lake in Alabama,
Right.
Is a good place to start.
Yeah, it is. This is funny too, and I have an issue that I champion a lot, and it's that there's not enough music, but also songwriting at early enough age for people. Most people come to it late in their life, and sometimes you have to live it. I mean, sometimes you do have to live life to have enough to write about, but most people come late to songwriting. They may come earlier to musical skills, but these days there's not as much music in school. Now, you work also with
Kids, yeah.
you work with the jammed programs, right?
I'm going to do a workshop for them tomorrow. I'm not officially part of that, but I do know some of the kids that help out with
Some
that.
of the kids that I know, Carly Airwood's playing. She is a product of that.
Yeah.
She's here. She's a product of that. Daniel, I guess, is too.
Danielle,
And
Mallory, and
there's a fabulous banjo player, a absolutely fabulous banjo player, Carson Moore.
I know about
Carson is
yeah.
fabulous. Another product of that,
Well, I just love teaching, and I have a nonprofit called Screen Door Songwriter Alliance, and what we do or have done is go into towns that have high needs situations, smaller towns, go in the schools and help the kids learn how to write their songs. So, being a shrink, being a psychologist, I learned that's much more something they want to do than sit and talk to somebody.
True.
Then we have a festival where they sing their songs.
That is really cool.
And seeing that happen, and seeing kids like, in Georgia, it was kids who were out catching chickens at night and putting them on trucks. They, and so they didn't have the kind of confidence. Anyway, having them be able to write their songs is like they felt big.
Right.
They felt like somebody. They felt like they had a story.
That's great. That's great. What have we missed? What else do my listeners need to know?
Oh, I don't know. I ride a John Deere tractor. I like to ride at sunset, and I get a lot of. I don't know that I write my songs at that point, or I'd probably get knocked off by a pine tree. But I think it's just for me, what I try to cultivate in my life is more of a state of reverie, I guess you could say. It's kind of a spiritual place for me, and I try to cultivate that. I do that by riding my tractor at sunset and bush hogging, but it could be whatever works for someone. And it being a songwriter in that sense, I think it makes me a better person.
That's great. Again, thank you for taking the time to come by here.
Thank you. It's a great honor.